Hi, I'm Robert Hunt, and this is one of a series of videos that go along with my book, Muslim Faith and Values. Today we'll talk about women in Islam. Recently, my students, having read portions of the Quran and some other literature, asked again about the role of women in Islam. They were surprised by the vehemence with which one Muslim writer, a man, had asserted the equality of women given what appear to be their restricted roles. Well, in my book, Muslim Faith and Values, Muslim women have their own voice, so I won't repeat their words. Instead, we need to look at a bigger issue, one that affects not only Islam, but Judaism, Christianity, and even Asian religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. As different as these religions are from one another, in their pre-modern form, they all have some things in common. First, all believe that humans live under a moral code that transcends individuals and societies and has some transcendent source. In the Abrahamic faiths, that moral code is given by God. In the Asian religion, it is more impersonal, an outworking of karma or the will of heaven. And here we can see then one claim to equality. Men and women are equally obliged to fulfill this moral code. They are equally subject to the consequences of failing or succeeding in doing so. A second characteristic of these non-modern religions is they teach that God or karma or heaven has determined the identity of each person. Humans can choose how they act, but they can't choose who they are. They can't choose their sex, their gender, their ethnic identity, their social status, or for the most part, even their work. And that gets us to the third commonality. All modern religions teach that God has ordained a social structure in which each person has, by virtue of their fixed identity, a defined role. Some identities entail a relatively wider range of choices, some less. But even the Apostle Paul won't grant a man who is identified as a slave his freedom. He sends the escaped slave Onesimus back to his master. But notice that the burden of a fixed role is one shared by everybody equally in society. Everybody has a role. Everybody has both a set of obligations and demands and expectations. And those are for everybody inescapable as long as the person remains within society. Now, there's an escape route in every one of these religions from society, but we'll talk about that another time. So the real distinction here isn't between different religions. Muslims, Orthodox Jews, Roman Catholics, conservative Protestants all have very similar ideas about the divine moral order, about fixed identities, about gender roles, and about equality. They may differ on exactly what those roles and identities are, but they all believe in a divine moral order, fixed identities, fixed gender roles, and equality. Where a difference arises in our world, indeed a real conflict, is when these religions fall under the sway of modernity and its radically new way of thinking about what it means to be human. Modern people may believe in ancient revelations, but they interpret those revelations as revealing principles for making decisions about morality rather than laying down specific laws. And modern persons may entirely reject the idea, in fact, they usually do, reject the idea that God gives us fixed identities and that we can't escape them. Instead, the focus in modernity is on individual autonomy, the ability of each person to freely choose their identity and to choose the role they wish to play in society. To really understand the role of women in Islam today, then we need to focus less on the teaching of traditional Islamic roles and more on the ways in which modern Muslim women are insisting on their own right to interpret the Quran and the Hadith, and are insisting on their own right to choose which identities and roles and how they will fulfill those roles that are coming up. It is the rise of the modern Muslim woman that will be far more important than the traditional teaching of Islam in telling us who women are and who women will be in Islam. Thanks for listening. You can watch my other YouTube videos learn some more about Islam, Muslim faith and values.